You are listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio, and I am your host, Jessica Dewell. This is program 67, Breakout of Being Set in Your Ways. Today I talk with Deb Oakland, who is a courage advocate. She's the author of Change Your Movie, Change Your Life, 7 real concepts for courageous change that help you take control of your life. We're talking about habits, and I share a personal habit with mine in this program, and Deb shares some personal stories as well. And really what it comes down to is habits and changing habits is a choice. And in that choice, we have to really want it. And the way that it looks when we go after changing a habit may be different than anything we have ever seen before, because there's so many things out there that we don't know as much as there are many things out there that we do know. So keeping in mind some conscious and unconscious choices, which you will hear about, the amount of our brain that we use in our lives, and even things like how do we start just noticing where we have habits that are based off of assumptions, or that we're avoiding, or that we're denying. So listen in right after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
We'll start with this question here. What does it take to recognize that we're set in our ways, and how do we break out of those habits and build the ones we must have for our success?
I've been thinking about this quite a bit because it's such a fascinating topic. Wouldn't you agree that when we're set in our ways, habits are hard to break? It's now a proven fact that our unconscious mind is running our life. That's pretty powerful. Habitual habits, the ones that are just truly set in, require little or no conscious thought. You have to think of being on autopilot or running on a sub-program in the supercomputer of your brain. That's what we're doing. I was reading about former professor of medicine at Stanford University, Dr. Bruce Lipton, stating that studies from as far back as the 70s show that our brains begin to prepare for action just over a third of a second before we consciously decide to act. In other words, even when we think we're conscious, it's our unconscious mind which is actually making our decisions for us. And it seems that the unconscious mind is running us on its automatic pilot mode. That's 95% of the time. That's huge to be running on your unconscious. Conscious mind provides 5% or less of our cognitive conscious activity during the day. And 5%, they say, is for more aware people. The rest are at 1%. Isn't that amazing?
I am floored. Yeah, that's
I was floored too. I was like, how can this be? You have to think about our daily routines become our habits. Just for example, think about driving your car. When you drive your car, you can get from point A to point B, and it's like in a dream. Sometimes you can't even remember the drive. Automatically do it. We're set on the unconscious mode. Of course, we're looking for danger, and we're being aware of what's going on around us, but it's automatic. I mean, we've been doing it since we've been young. Most people drive when they're very young, and for the rest of your life, it's what happens. Say you want to change a daily habit that's become a routine. Let's say like drinking coffee. Most people love their coffee. Problem arises when you still want or crave your coffee. You might want to quit drinking coffee, but how are you going to do that when you're still craving it? Here's another example. If you have bacon and eggs and toast or potatoes every morning for breakfast, it's going to be challenging to start your day with something like a smoothie. The question becomes, are you craving bacon and eggs? Every time you smell bacon, you're triggered. The trigger could be the deciding factor in your success. That trigger is key. We tend to want to shift quickly, but taking time, I think, serves us a little better. Like say if you want to have bacon and eggs 2, 3, 4 days a week, do that. Have smoothies on the other days until you can take it from there and convert to whatever suits your lifestyle better. And then you get into emotion, which is a major driving factor. I mean, our emotion drives almost everything that we do. You can take a person that, just for example, they don't love themselves. And there's a lot of people that don't love themselves very much, or they love part of themselves, but they're not into unconditional love. It takes a great deal of concentrated effort to succeed in loving themselves. It's a process. Yeah. And we all know people who continue to go into relationships where they're feeling unloved, they're abused, they're mentally or physically abused with people that aren't in integrity. Yet these habits die so hard, and the pain body needs to be fed. But if you have negative programming in your subconscious, Dr. Lipton says 95% of the time, you'll recreate those negative experiences in your life. And many people who have low self-esteem in regard to relationships are only going to be able to break the pattern after much pain and heartbreak. And that's sad. If you think about it, the key to change is to bring the patterns that create a habit to conscious awareness so they can be identified and permanent change can be implemented. But you've got to identify these patterns, and changing a habit takes repetitive intention and behavior over and over. You have to commit to the process. In a way, I know this sounds kind of weird, but I think it's good that habits are hard to break, if you can kind of wrap your mind around that, because it makes us work at being better, at expanding versus contracting.
And I would add to that and say, because once we get there, then the good habits that we want that are bringing us success have longer staying power. It takes a whole lot more to knock us down or to change those habits back into something that are less useful to us.
Here's my big question. Are habits simply responses to needs?
Okay, are habits responses to needs? We're going to get really personal here for this episode. There's probably going to be not a lot of business stuff going on because we're talking about breaking out of being set in our ways. And that's for our own personal development. And it starts with us in every aspect of our life. So we may touch on business things, but this is going to be a lot of personal stuff. People don't talk about sugar addiction very much, Deb. And I am almost positive that I am addicted to sugar. How do I know, or what makes me crave sugar? And the weird thing is, when I have milk or cheese, I want sugar. And not everybody is wired that way. So when I share that thing that I notice, people are like, oh, that's so weird. That can't be right. There's got to be. And I'm like, I'm not labeling. I'm noticing. That's all I'm doing. So there's a correlation. So if I eat a pizza, I'm going to want something else. If I eat a baked potato covered in cheese and bacon, I'm going to want munchies that are sugary. And this has been something that I've noticed every single time I start craving sugar. I'm like, well, what have I been eating first? Second is there's an emotional response because I associate comfort with eating. And that was something that we never talked about in my family, but that was a trait and a habit that I got from just living in the house I lived in. Once I recognized that there was this emotional eating component, my whole world lit up because I'm like, okay, if something happens to me good and I'm going to eat in this way because I've decided here's the label of what's good and here's the food that goes with the label of what's good or not good, which by the way, if you look at it, I'm wondering people, if you're listening, are they the same? In my case, they were all the same.
It made you feel good.
They make you feel good
it's
because
your
the
comfort place. It's
exactly
not your pain body, but your sugar body.
Yeah, basically. But I think it was a pain body. I mean, sugar body for the good, but I think it was the pain body feeling comfort from that. I don't know if a habit is a response because I don't think all habits are bad. I mean, you know what I mean? We have some really good habits and we only focus on the bad ones.
Love is a great habit.
Love is a great habit, and boy, is it underplayed.
Well, let's go through a little bit about these Maxwell malts, the psycho-cybernetics. You've heard that changing a habit takes a minimum of 21 days. And he said minimum, not 21 days. A minimum. And that's where things got a little messed up with all the self-help teachers out there. They'd say it takes 21 days. And it's a myth. It's not. So how long does it really take to build a habit? So I went in and started researching this, and it's all over the internet. Philippa Lawley, I don't know if it's Lally or Lawley, a psychology researcher at University College London. And in a study published in the European Journal of Social Psychology, she and her research team decided to figure out just how long it actually takes to form a habit. And the study examined the habits of 96 people over a 12-week period, and And each person chose one new habit for the 12 weeks, reported each day on whether or not they did the behavior, did it or did it not affect their habit. And how automatic was it? How did it feel? So some chose simple things like drinking a bottle of water for lunch. And others decided a more difficult task, like maybe running 15 minutes before dinner. And at the end of the 12 weeks, the researchers analyzed the data to determine how long it took each person from starting a new behavior to automatically doing it. And the answer, which is not surprising to me, on average, was 2 months before a new behavior becomes automatic. 66 days is what they say was the exact time. And then how long it takes a habit to form can widely vary, depending on the behavior of the person, their circumstances. And in the study, it took anywhere from 18 days to 254 days for people to form a new habit.
And that's actually really interesting because, and I'm going to go back to the sugar for me personally here, because it's a constant thing, which is where habits and addiction, I don't think we know enough about the differences yet. I mean, we know about alcohol, we know about drugs, we know about pills, but we don't understand other foods that might be addictive based off of your circumstance, your DNA, all that other good stuff that you have. For me, I will tell you, when I first recognized this and decided to do something about it, 2 months gave me the brain power to have will in a decision around sugar. Mm-hmm. A year was automatic. I didn't even have to look at the dessert menu anymore. I just set it aside. I didn't want the cookies or candy. When it was time for a snack or I was hungry, I reached, maybe a sugary fruit, right? Like a strawberry or a blueberry or a salad or something else. But it took me almost a year. And now if I go near sugar, I have to watch myself for a while afterwards because it's easy. It is easy to fall into things that your body can overwrite that. I don't know if it's the emotion part. I don't know if it's the DNA part. I think it's a combination of both. But that I know if I want to increase my consciousness and be actively involved, get out of the 1% of people and get up toward the 5% of people, it starts with awareness, doesn't it?
Even though it's an emotional response, it's also could be a chemical issue.
That's right.
As well.
That's right.
So there's all kinds of, some people just go to hypnosis. I think in the long run, it's better if you take the time to change the habit yourself. She was also saying, Lolly was saying that if you want to set your expectations appropriately, the truth is it will probably take you anywhere from 2 months to 8 months to build a new behavior in your life, not 21 days.
So are you calling a behavior something different than a habit, or are you using those two interchangeably here?
There's that line where it all mushes together.
I didn't know for you because I'm like, they could be the same, but they might not. So I just wanted to.
I think with your behavior, you can change your behavior. You have conscious choice in every moment.
I'm reading this book. Well, actually, I'm hearing about this book. I can't wait to read it. It's called The Politics of Your Mind. It talks about how deep-seated and rooted some of the things that we believe are. And of course, we know that we have biased language. When a woman says that she is pregnant and decides to find out what the sex of the baby is, anybody who talks to her and her baby change the language to be masculine or feminine based off of the sex that is known before that baby ever arrives. And so we have these unconscious biases that exist just in our culture of being human. There is always going to be a yin and a yang. And if we look at masculine and feminine or male and female as the yin and the yang, there's nothing wrong with it until we allow our assumptions to take over. And so that makes me go back to your original question, are habits responses? And I'm wondering, is part of our response just an assumption?
I often think about and write about the fact that here we are right brain, left brain, we're masculine and feminine, we balance our spirit, our soul. Mm-hmm. And here we are working so hard to unbalance ourselves. Oh, you're a boy, you can't play with a pink toy. You're a girl, you don't want to play with trucks. This has been inundated, and that's changing. Mm-hmm. And it has changed, but when we have a balance of the masculine and feminine within us, we work on that left brain, right brain balance, it really changes our life and enhances it in so many ways.
Well, basically, I hear us talking around is that we tend to get in our own way. We think somebody else wants us to do something, so that's the way we're going to be. We decide we're going to be something, even though it's inherently against our whole essence and the reason that we're here. Yeah, we do it anyway. So is that easy? Is it easy to go against what you are here to do?
No, it's not easy. Are you kidding? I mean, here we grow up wanting to be like everybody else when we go to school. You know, we want to fit in. So we want to be like our friends. You'll see kids walking down the street, and the ones that are in gaggles together, they all have the same hat on. One's got it on front ways, one's got it on back ways. They've got the same type of clothing that they're wearing. They want to fit in. You're not going to throw up like a punk rocker type of kid, rough and tumble, you know, kind of insecure kid with a mohawk running around with a bunch of conservative Yale type kids. You don't see it very often because we want to fit in so badly. Then we spend the rest of our lives trying not to fit in.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, listening in, this is program 67 of Voice of Bold Business Radio. I am your host, Jessica Dewell, and you are listening to Deb Oakland talk to me about breaking out of being set in our ways. Let's talk about this courage piece. You have a newsletter called Living in Courage. You breathe and exist and ooze love all around. And you take the courageous step, even when, I mean, I've watched you in just the few years that we've known each other. I've watched you do things that might not fit in because they're the right thing. We've got to develop courage to face change. And I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit. And I know your current book has some good hints. So if there's something in there that you want to share as well, we would love to hear it.
Well, my book is Change Your Movie, Change Your Life, 7 Real, and I spell it REEL, Concepts for Courageous Change. And it takes courage to be the director of your life, not an extra or a stand-in. So that's where changing your habits come in. And if you truly desire change, take the time to do what's required on your part. And this varies for each of us. I think about everything is temporary, so enjoy life's moments while you have them. You know, I've gone through a lot of loss, so enjoy who you have in your life and what you have in your life. And if you don't like it, change it, because as they say, we are what we repeatedly do. It's like, if you don't like the direction that your life is going in, do something different, because everything that you did, all of these habits that took you to where you are now will continue unless you make a concentrated effort to change them. I want to bring up something about the former professor of medicine at Stanford. He says the new science of epigenetics has shown that our genes are in fact controlled and manipulated by how our minds perceive and interpret our environment. It was formerly believed by science that it is our genes themselves that dictate our traits, and that our genes form how we are and how we function in life. But the new findings are great news, because it means that we can change many things about the way we are, including our health, by changing how we interpret events and situations which happen to us. For example, he shows that if we interpret things in a positive way, and I always talk about this, we start living healthier and better quality lives regardless of the genetic makeup we started with. And that's what you've done.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like a new attitude, positive or negative, sends new messages to the cells of our body and can actually reprogram the health and the behavior, and it can change cellular structure, turning diseased cells into healthy cells. You could have eaten sugar the rest of your life and ended up with a diseased cell, but you changed the pattern, and that could change the course of your life, and you're teaching your children a new habit.
It's really interesting because we don't realize how much we lead by example. If you look at the majority of my family, they struggle, especially around anything related to food. I can actually remember I was sitting on my back porch in North Bend, Washington. So this was not too long ago, but long enough ago. I made a choice. I said, I can't be like that. I have too many things to do, and there are going to be too many things that get in my way that I have control over if I discontinue down this path. And so I picked one thing I could control: what goes in my mouth. And by the way, Some of you are like, you've got to be kidding me. And I'm like, yeah, that was the hardest thing I ever did. Some people say leaving home is the hardest. Some people, I mean, the fears that we come into this world with or acquire, that was nothing like making a decision to go against something that everybody around me had always done.
I think it's one of the biggest problems for people, their food intake.
I remember I'm still learning about portion control. So let's talk about, are habits responses or are they maybe avoidances? Because there are people who stick their head in the sand when it doesn't feel good. And it could be around food. It could be around the way we look. It could be around the way we think. It could be around what we're doing in our jobs. It could be around the relationships that we have in our lives. But
or
if
denial.
Yes, exactly. So I'm wondering if there's an avoidance denial component of this when we're talking about breaking out of our habits. So we have to turn around and we have to face this stuff. We have to just look at it and see it.
The Buddhist meditators have shown that people can actually change their brain structure regardless of their age. See, that's a big one for people. Say, oh, I'm an old dog. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. But by creating new neural pathways, and a lot of people are writing about this now, just by conscious thinking. And the same research also shows that people who meditate regularly have higher immunity, lower blood pressure, and other health benefits.
Do you meditate?
Oh, yes. I have for years and years. I love it. I write about this in my book. Not everybody can learn to meditate the same way.
Right.
Some people, it's by putting the music they love on their ears. Some people, it's walking the beach or surfing or going for a hike in the woods and communing with nature and the trees and a stream or rocks or whatever they're doing. Everything's energy. So whatever you're using to meditate, you do your ohms, you can do the gongs, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're at church. It's all the same thing. We just all give it different labels that are comfortable for us.
And I think in this case, comfort is a good thing because these are habits that are revitalizing and invigorating and build our ability to think when we need to think, focus when we need to focus, act when we need to act, and be who we need to be.
And it all leads to the same result.
Yeah.
You just call it different things and give it different names.
And so there's this whole big industry of meditation because we don't realize we might already be doing it. If we're not facing it and we're not looking at it, we're missing an opportunity for courage, aren't we?
Everybody does something courageous or lives courageous moments in their life. We all do. It's not set aside for a few people. We're all courageous in our own way.
Here in Boulder, once a year, they have this thing called the Boulder, which happens to be a qualifying race for Ironman, and it's a 10K. It started out just as that, and it's this big community thing now, and it's great, and it happens every Memorial Day. My son decided he wanted to walk this Boulder. I don't know if you remember, but he's 6, Deb.
Yeah.
He's growing up, but he's 6. And I'm like, you want to walk?
I was like,
You want to walk? And then I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? Let me think about this a little bit. We hike 5 to 7 miles. We walk downtown from our house. Round trip is about 6.5 miles. So I'm like, this will be tough because we take breaks on those other things, but I think we could do it. And I had to look at myself and go, wow, can I really do it? And I think people, when they asked if Carter could do it, were actually asking, could I do it? And I was like, yeah, well, we're gonna. And so we did. And I remember the day that I signed us up, I was like, well, I've made the commitment. Now all I've got to do is show up and do it. And the outcome is exactly as it should be, regardless of what I think it needs to be. And so that's just one small thing. I mean, sometimes
you're supporting your son.
Yes.
It's a great way to bond with your children.
Yes.
These types of things with them. And then they look to you as a mentor.
And think about it this way. Have you ever had those days you just don't want to get out of bed, let alone brush your teeth? I would call that courageous when you get out of bed on those days.
I think we've all had those days.
Yes. And so when you say everyday life all in our own way, I don't want to diminish the act of being and living as being courageous because they are. And we tend to overlook that a little bit like love, I think. If I needed to do something based off of your experiences and changing perceptions, what is something that you would recommend we try to just sit with and explore to see what places we might have habits we don't even realize we have?
I think it's a good thing to sit down with a pen and paper, write down your main habits. your habitual habits, put those at the top. And then make a list of, the lesser habits. And think about the fact that your unconscious is directing 95% of this. How much of your conscious mind do you want to take and spend time changing this habit like you did? It's a commitment. How badly do you want to change that habit? Really get in there and go deep. Do you desire to change it enough? Or are you just going to go right back into your regular habits? You think about people that want to quit smoking. I remember Cody's brother, he wanted to quit smoking, but he couldn't. The desire was too much to smoke. His young child wanted him to quit smoking, but he wouldn't do it. And just recently, his child's grown up and gone and living in Colorado. He just quit smoking because it was his choice, not because someone else wanted him to. It had to be his choice.
That is a wonderful, wonderful story, Deb. And so time, awareness, commitment, and choice, personal choice, all have to be lined up in some, I say have. Mm-hmm. Sounds like they must line up in some way.
Well, this is interesting because his son wanted him to quit smoking when he was young. He didn't. Well, his son ended up smoking, but he quit. But he did that because we are their mentors. You look towards your parents and your leaders and teachers as mentors, and you want to emulate them. And at some point, he wanted to emulate his father. And then he decided to stop. I think maybe even around the time his father did. So
the next time you go to your office and you're in the parking lot, or the next time you go to a client that has a larger office and you're in the parking lot, look at all the cars. Because one of the things that I noticed, I was probably 24, 25, and the executives in the organization that bought my first company, they all drove variations of the same car. Every single one of them. There was some status, standard thing going on. And now that I was one of them and I did not, I got razzed for that a decent amount. Mm-hmm. Because I drank different drinks when we went out with clients. I got razzed a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. And we're not alone in those things, but to just recognize these patterns that are around us in other places, these external influences that we might not even notice are kind of an interesting way to see some underlying assumptions in the circles we run in and we have chosen to be in at this point in our lives.
Right.
For me, it's always easier to look outside myself first, find the patterns, and then be able to go, here's what I see, and then filter myself through it. I know some people can totally come inside and go, this is what I'm going to do, hunker down, do what it needs to take, get it done because they want it so bad. I want it so bad. I'm like, I got to go out and see what else has been done or not done, what else has worked and not worked for people, just so I know, not because I'm trying to find the best way, but I just need context. And then I can go, now I can choose.
Now I can choose.
Isn't that interesting? There's a couple of different ways to approach it, and bringing it up might be helpful to people if they're like me, where I always thought I had to muster up this stuff from inside me to make things happen, and I don't get very far with that.
Here's a big question. Why do we have to make change so miserable for ourselves?
So I think we're going to end on that, recognizing the change. We've got to desire it. We've got to want it. And when it's fun, it's that much easier and actually will have more lasting results from it.
Moment by moment, we create everything by our thoughts, feelings, and actions. So when we decide to change a habit, maybe instead of dreading it, just like, wow, this is going to be fun. Make it fun. Make it enjoyable. Bring some fun aspect into it, because there has to be a way to do that.
Oh man, every single time I talk to Deb, I leave excited and happy, and I'm ready. I'm ready to start looking at my life in a different way and seeing what other habits might be there that are standing in the way of my personal success. And I invite you to do the same. When we get in our own way, all we're doing is hurting ourselves and possibly making those people around us miserable because we're miserable in some way. When we're thinking about fitting in and we're thinking about what we can do and we're thinking about intentional behavior and purposeful action. Ooh, one of my favorite hashtags, purposeful action. What can we do? How do we do it? Do we really want to do it? All really good questions to ask. You will find program notes for today's show at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P67. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 67. You can also search for Breakout of Being Set in Your Ways. Share your story and experience, because it's through our stories and our experiences that we define what being a leader means today. We want to know from you, what do you need to do for success and break out of being set in your ways?
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.